All right, let's take you to our top story at this hour, and this, of course, is the recognition of the AmaZulu King Misuzulu KaZwelithini being set aside by the court as unlawful and invalid, and therefore the recognition decision thus being set aside. And let's speak now to legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Firstly, did this ruling take you by surprise?
Not really, but it was surprising in the manner in which the court might have interpreted in the type of the order that is. But the court, I think, is erring on the correct side or the right side in saying, well, we are going to say there must have been an investigation that ought to have been made. The complaint which has been submitted to the office of the president must be taken as a valid complaint. We're not going to declare anyone to be the king, Isilo, or not to be Isilo, but what we're going to do is to direct the president to cause or to make sure that there's an investigation which is going to properly investigate the matter, just to ensure that everything goes in accordance with customary law and all the other applicable laws that are there. So for now, it is that investigation team which is going to take center stage and determine whether the correct customs and rituals were really followed in the appointment of King Misuzulu.
I'm going to get to what it means and at a practical, in a practical sense in just a moment. But I want us to stay with this very part where the court is saying that this judgment is not about who should be the king of the AmaZulu nation, but by in itself, the ruling can take the nation back to that point, can it not?
Yes, it can. And you see two sort of systems of recognition intertwining with each other, being in conflict. Remember, traditionally, Isilo has certain ways in which it's been identified. And the act is quite clear in terms of saying the customs and the rituals which are supposed to be followed must be followed to the T. Meanwhile, the president merely issues a recognition certificate upon the advice of the Zulu family or the Zulu nation, advising him that, Mr. President, we have sat down as a family. This is the person that you've been able to identify. So this is the person that you must issue the recognition certificate to. So what this judgment is focusing really on is to say, from the side of the president, on the practical basis, legislative compliance basis, Mr. President, this is what has ought to have taken place. And we're not going to delve into the customs that need to be investigated, which for me, I think is the real point of contention or the merits of the matter as to who exactly should be sitting in that particular seat. And that, I think, is going to be determined by the investigative team if it gets to that particular stage.
And I was going to ask about that, because that will now become the big, subject, is whether this matter is appealed or not. The people who are going to be sitting in that investigating team, should it go ahead, are going to be quite critical to monitor or to note, because those are the people that essentially may then be key to a decision that is made at a later stage.
For a lack of a better explanation, those are the people who are going to identify the next seal or to certify that the current seal is indeed the correct individual that should be sitting there. So you are going to find contentions who is going to sit there, depending on whether there are any perceived elements of biasness that have been there. So whatever utterances have been stated by those cultural experts will then come to the fore. The manner in which they've been selected will also come to the fore, and it is something that can be disputed and be something that we are going to fight about in the courts should any of the parties feel that they are aggrieved by the decision that has been taken. So if the president is going to comply with this particular order, he should then say, how do I make sure that the process of identifying the individuals that should serve in this investigative committee are individuals that are not going to be perceived as being biased, are going to be looked at as being independent, are going to be individuals who comply with the requirements as per the Act. But most importantly, I want people who know what they're doing. So they must be cultural experts. They must be people in which, if their credentials are questioned, it will be easy for them to then answer and say, I know this particular line of investigation, this particular subject matter, because I've dealt with this for so many years, and I know what I'm talking about when the customs and the rituals are being selected as to who the next Isilo is going to be.
So does the AmaZulu nation then have a king now?
Technically, you can say yes. Remember, you have a space in which you are then supposed to appeal that particular judgment. And then only then you can then come back and say, on a technical level, you don't have a king. But let's also remember, a king is not selected by the president. Isilo is not appointed by the president. It's simply recognized by the president. So if a person believes that the Usilo Misuzulu was recognized in proper customary manner, they are going to continue providing their allegiance to them, and that's basically a course which are going to say, this is the Silo that we know, this is the one that we believe, all the rituals that were supposed to be followed. This is the individual that should have occupied that particular seat. So on a technical basis, we have someone sitting at the throne. Yes, there might be disputes here and there, but on a technical and strict level, you do have the Silo and you do have the king of the Zulu nation.
All right, it's going to be interesting, as you say, how then the family moves forward on this one. But as you say, that we may see an appeal here. So what does the appeal process then look like? And also, should it get to that issue of the committee, who makes up that committee that is going to investigate is also going to be critical to watch. But let me thank you so much for your time, just to help us, make sense of this particular ruling. And we'll continue to monitor this particular story. That was legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala.